Dublab.
There was one vinyl that my mom used to play me when I was probably like around 6, 7-ish, which was Rimsky-Korsakov, the Sherazade. And it was, she told me the story. It was about this kind of this journey through the over an ocean, and that unfortunately ended really badly. I think the ship sank, and it was very, very over romantic. And I remember listening to that, like my mind totally like on fire. That was sort of pretty epic. I liked the Rimsky-Korsakov piece also because it was very sensual and very passionate and very open. We lived in this kind of tiny little house on the suburbs of Reykjavik. I think my mom had kind of found this, she was sort of a bit of a hippie, kind of didn't have much money, but she also was trying to sort of be outside the grid or whatever. And we had this tiny house with only one bedroom that would like leak when it rained. And we had to me and my brother had to empty buckets of water middle of the night. We just thought the whole thing was like an adventure. And in that little house, by this Salmon River that goes through Reykjavik, just to put that album on, like the vinyl, and it was just this kind of totally exotic, sensual world. Yeah, I mean, I could probably sit here all day and remember more and more peaks for me that have been related to music. I definitely remember listening to a lot of the stuff my stepdad would play. It was basically music playing 24/7 in my house, really loud, and he really followed really well what was current, and I was really blessed in that way. And then I remember when he kind of came home with this album that I felt like, wow, that's like more me, was an album called Don Juan's Reckless Daughter with Joni Mitchell. And I was just like obsessed. I was probably about 13 at the time, 14.
I'm Don Juan's reckless daughter. I came out 2 days on your tail. Those 2 bald-headed days in November before the first snowflake sail.
And I just listened to that one album like a billion times. And my stepdad didn't like it as much as I did, which made the epiphany even sweeter, probably. And it sort of was like my album. Since I was a kid, I've always written most of my melodies walking outside. And I kind of feel sometimes that I kind of come to the studio and on my room and record it, that I'm doing like a replica of the stuff, like the best stuff happened like on that hill, I think nature for an Icelandic person probably has a slightly different meaning than maybe the average urban person, like no offense, but I think for us Icelandic people, probably because we got no trees really and no animals really, and there's geologically it's just really a young place.
Just more broken than normal.
I remember actually going, the first time I went abroad, I was 9 years old, and I went to Norway with my grandfather, and we went on a 9-hour train ride from Oslo to Bergen, and he was terrified. He was so claustrophobic because he couldn't see the mountains. There was so much trees, and he was just like, this is terrible. He was like really like thinking of it as some sort of a second-class country. Maybe it has something to do with the north, the fact that you have this kind of, it's more barren landscapes with tundras, and it's more about solitude and becoming one with yourself in some sort of a reflective way and enjoying the space. You know, it's about space opposed to the clutter and the cluster and the busyness of like, say, jungles or cities, you know. And for me, it's just normal. When I was 6, I would walk 40 minutes to school, and in any weather, and all the kids did that. And I really loved it. I just really loved it. And I would just walk first for 10 minutes, and then I would just start humming to myself. And then before I knew it, I was like singing the top of my lungs. I think overall I'm probably a bit of a northerner. I like music that's pretty sparse and stark, and I really notice it with some of the people I love most, my friends who are like, for example, English or something, brought up in the fields, you know, that they like this kind of like layering, delicate layering of like sort of horizontal fields, music like that, sort of almost like ambient. My music is more like that lava field, crooked, like eccentric, odd, awkward lava field with that one crooked, optimistic plant, artistic plant in the corner, giving it a go, and a bit of a blizzard once in a while. So, or just fierce Icelandic summers with 22 hours sunlight. So it's a different kind of, different proportions. And I think also in my music, I like 3 or 4 elements, you know, but each one is kind of large. So I think overall, especially I'm like that. But saying that, everything you say, there's always the contradiction, right? For sure, and that's something I've actually learning more and more in my life. But the contradiction to everything I just said would be like an album, like for example, Vespertine, where I just done homogenic. And on purpose, homogenic was like big volcanic beats and big dramatic strings and vocals sung on 11 and just done the tour where I screamed my heart out every gig. And I came home and I was just like shivering. I was like, I can never take that sort of, I'm so over that sort of intensity. It's boring, it's predictable. It's like, oh, it's so like whatever. So I was just, okay, let's do the opposite. And I just got my laptop. So I was like, okay, I want to record skrillion micro beats and have like 100 channels of, and where I just, take the sound of a cricket's leg and make it louder than any volcanic beat, and zoom in into secrets and tiny quiet things. So, and then that was like layering where I actually had harp players and glockenspiels, and I actually ended up going to Vermont, where I found a music box company that made huge copper plates the size of like a 12-inch, where they carved the patterns of my songs in them, make like music boxes. And I was just like in heaven with like choirs and strings, and so that's probably as layery as I've ever gone. And it was really, I mean, the editing job on that album was like major. It was like, it basically just took me 3 years on my laptop, just like it was a one big sort of collage piece. And I really enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say it's me the most typical. When I went to Spain in '96, I had very intense 3 years, really, really fun years, but it was like really intense, like touring and like really probably when I was at most busiest. And I kind of like sort of escaped to Spain, I guess, and I was like, okay, now I want to do. I started doing Homogenic, and I was so happy to be there. You have no idea. And it was like winter in the Mediterranean, which is kind of perfect for Icelandic people because that's like we're not really good at summers in Mediterranean. It's too hot for us, and that meant the beaches were kind of empty, you know, and you could walk and work on ideas. So I was close to Gibraltar, and I was like walking on the beach, and I had this kind of like little QI70, like a Yamaha songwriting little machine, and I was like walking on that beach, and kind of like taking the piss out of myself, and which I'm not sure, sometimes people, like my sense of humor is a bit odd, and most of the time it's sort of between me and myself, and probably everybody else thinks I'm dead serious. But then I was kind of taking the piss out of myself because I was kind of like touring a lot and kind of bored of writing songs or being this kind of like person who is like the music maker. And then I wrote this song called Hunter, and it has a bolero beat, which definitely is some sort of strange piss take of Ravel's bolero. And then I kind of thought, oh, let's face it, that's what I do. I'm a music maker. I'm the hunter.
I'm going hunting. I'm a hunter. I'm a hunter. I'm going hunting.
I'm obviously obsessed with humor. I mean, a lot of things that I've done have been pretty tongue-in-cheek for me. I mean, I definitely get it that I probably come across being more serious than I actually intend to be. I mean, for example, the swan dress, that was definitely a joke. Otherwise, I would not have brought 6 ostrich eggs and left them on the red carpet. Another example is probably the Clear Independence on Volta album. For me, it was like a hilarious protest song. But I mean, obviously, it's also got a grain of truth in it. It's not like, it doesn't mean that it's not serious as well. And Medulla, a lot of that was hilarious for me, like a cappella music. I just find it a very hilarious music genre, you know, and maybe that's something I managed to embrace a little bit with Spike in the Triumph of a Heart video, where we were just being drunk in a bar with all my mates and everybody just starts like beatboxing. I think with each of my albums it's like a different story. I kind of come into it, especially in the beginning of each album, differently, and very often it has to do with the end of the previous one, how it ended. You know, for example, you know, like Post for me was very much about probably the most extrovert period of my life, where I was going a lot to clubs in London and meeting a lot of people that are still like some of my best friends. And so it was really like, you know, the city lights, you know, Trafalgar Square, like the most kind of intense kind of Times Square, like urban, promiscuous, kind of like on every single level. And then kind of overdosing from that, maybe a little bit towards the end, and then kind of, so Homogenic was a reaction to that, where it's like, okay, it's good to be part of multiculti and, you know, cosmopolitan energy, but what are you? Like, what is your nationality? Well, how would you do Icelandic beats? And I'm like, oh, actually, I think it's beats made of volcanoes, you know. I mean, another extreme merge is from biophilia into vulnicura, which is a really sort of in some ways opposites. So, biophilia being this kind of selfless, pedagogy, philanthropic, the atoms and the universe and everyone included, equilibrium, celebration, like no human scale. It was either micro, macro, sort of element table kind of music teacher thing, and then going to the total opposite, which is the psychological kind of like one-on-one confessional. They sometimes the albums become they push against each other because the previous album has been so intense, something for 3 years, that I sort of just push myself against it and go some other direction. Whereas other things I maybe have a thread, for example, biophilia. I met so many app people, and that sort of later became, the VR element of vulnicura is in a way a continuity of that, If I go through a whole day and I don't listen to music, and it can still be an amazing day, or a day where I actually have headphones and I listen to music all day, or I put an album on in my house, there are like two different days. And the fact that you can have this kind of alternative world that music is, and blend it into the life you lead in such a seamless way, it's such a powerful thing. And you can be very intentional. You can wake up and you can say, okay, I want to feel like this today, and I'm gonna put my happiest R&B track on, and I'm gonna play a happy R&B set, playlist for 2 hours in the morning, and it totally sets your whole day off, Or if you start playing, your really tragic string quartet, whatever, over breakfast, it's gonna like set you down into a certain loop. And I love that about music,
These cells are virgins.
And I think as a musician, we're always trying to set up a situation. I've said it before, like organizing an accident, because it can't be too deliberate, but where you are in a cabin with friends and you happen to have prepared beats or prepared chords, or you've actually written the song but you haven't done the beats, or you're trying to set up a situation where you can just have this kind of like moment of freedom and spontaneity, and that you can capture that somehow, and to have that spirit of transcendence. You try it all the time, but I mean, I'm not going to be the judge of how often I've managed to do it, but it's always the target. And I think as a musician, I think we all aim for it all the time, and then if only 5% of the times we manage to do it, it's still all worth it,
They're stepping